What is going on, my fellow Summit Chasers, and welcome back to the Summit Coffee Club. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm glad you asked. Do you like my hat? Do you like my hat? Summit Coffee Club hat. You cannot buy your own yet, actually. I know you're jealous, but we are working out. We're testing some things out, and I really like this hat. I really like this hat. We have some other hats that Adrena has. She's wearing right now. It's more for I think like women style hats. I don't know. I just know that they wouldn't fit my big ass head, but we're very excited for some Summit Coffee Club and Summit Chasers merch coming out. I'm not quite dripping in all the Summit Chasers merch right now, but I'm very excited for that stuff to come out. And again, I'm so happy with how this hat turned out. So good. But I have a very special guest today. We just had our Young Professionals Leadership Summit last weekend, and it was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. We're very excited about it. We got the feedback from it's been absolutely incredible, and it went off. I'm not gonna say it went off without a hitch. We had to make some adjustments, but it was our first event put on with that team, and I thought it went really well. And one of the reasons it went so well is because of our guest that we have today. And I meant to ask her how to pronounce her last name, so I'm just going to give you her first name when I bring her up here. But the thing I have to plug today was actually the last day of we're wrapping up our very first 5-day strategy core challenge, and it went really well. Everyone got so much out of it. The group that we had was so engaged. It went a little bit longer each day than I anticipated, but we're very excited with how it went. And so I'm excited to get some testimonials out there. I'm excited for everybody to kind of share how that went. But with that being said, our November 19th cohort is starting to fill up. We only have 4 spots left for that one. And then we just opened up our one in December. So that is going to be December 10th to the 15th or 14th, either one of those days. And then that'll be the last one for the year. And that's the best time to do it. Don't wait until the new year to start planning for the new year. This would be a great way for you and your business to get clear on where you need to go, the decisions you need to make, the priorities, where you're going to allocate resources, what you're going to cut, and then how you can continue to make the right decisions and how you can continue on creating coherent strategies as your business evolves, as the industries change, as markets change, and that kind of good stuff. So again, very, very excited to continue to put on and expand these challenges and get into the community itself. But I'm going to stop talking about that because I want to introduce our very special guest, Chantal. There we go. Click the right button. How we doing?
Hello. Good morning.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Gagnon.
Gagnon. So it's French.
It's French. And my favorite way to help people with that is like the filet mignon. It's like Gagnon.
Gagnon. Yeah, well, that's how I would have naturally pronounced it. But you never know. I've put my foot in my mouth with names before.
Well,
thank you for being here. Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, Summit Coffee Club.
I love it. Do you drink coffee? Do you have coffee?
I've already had my coffee. Oh yeah.
You've already had your coffee. Yeah, you're on the East Coast. It's like almost noon. That's fair. I get it. I'm not gonna get coffee. So are you only coffee like first thing in the morning and then you stop, or are you a coffee all day person?
I would be if the caffeine wouldn't totally mess me up. I enjoy just sipping on a coffee. It's a fun thing to do, but couldn't do all the caffeine.
It's a fun thing to do. It is a fun thing to do. And decaf, I don't know if it's like it's in my head or if it does actually just taste different, or maybe they just don't have as good like roasts in decaf. I think that might actually be it. But decaf just doesn't.
I mean, doesn't do the thing. I do like half a cup of almond milk anyway. So I'm not too affected by the decaf taste.
You do half a cup so you're like a latte person.
Yeah, I'm a latte person. Cappuccino for getting technical, but
that's fair. Yeah, I don't know that. I do love a cappuccino after dinner. So good.
That is nice dessert. Yeah. I do love that.
It's very nice. But anyways, we could talk about that all day. But I want to take this time to publicly thank you for all that you did helping us put on the YPLS, the Young Professionals Leadership Summit that we had last weekend. You were an integral part in getting that planned, running the event, keeping Adrena sane, and making it a smooth experience for everybody. So I really want to thank you for that.
Oh my gosh. You guys, it was so much fun. It was just so much fun to work with you. It was so much fun to be there. Really got my creative wheel spinning again. So thank you too. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
where did you, because you well get this is a good segue into kind of what you do and where your expertise is, because you put on a lot of events with Salesforce, right? And maybe other companies.
So with Salesforce, I did a lot of workshops with our customers. So those could be sort of smaller groups to larger ones. They varied. But I've always kept one foot in the startup space. And I used to run Startup Weekend in New York City, if anyone's
Mm,
ever heard of that. Those are the bigger events. They were multi-day over a weekend, typically around 200 plus people. So that's where my event experience comes in, really. Yeah.
yeah, that's a decent size. Uh, so you said you keep one foot in startup space. Where is, because you were with, how long were you with Salesforce?
A little over 5 years.
It's a little over 5 years. So where would you say your heart is, with startups, like smaller businesses, or with like do you want to jump into a monster and like take over? Like where do you
Well, that's
like
why
to
I
go?
always want to put in the startup space, because what I love there is so it's interesting. When I joined Salesforce, I joined the innovation consulting team, and it was a
Mm,
huge mindset shift for me because being in the startup space, innovation really means creating net new ideas.
literally.
Whereas innovation in a corporate environment and with enterprises really means how are we moving our paper processes onto technology? Like it can literally mean that to them would be how they define innovation.
Innovation, yeah.
So to answer your question, I kind of always sort of played in both spaces because I wanted to keep this insatiable sort of curiosity for what's going on out there, the creative aspect of things alive. But I really like thinking about sort of soup to nuts, full system, kind of meaty projects. So yeah.
Hmm. Meaty projects, I get it. It's
Mhm.
because it is, to your point. This is just because I literally just came from the last session of our strategy challenge, and one of the things that we went over in day two was like the different market environments, and like these bigger companies, like they live in this classic market environment where iterations are really small, big changes take a long time, and that kind of stuff. So your point of, they think innovation is like, we're going paperless, we're innovating,
Yeah.
or they're changing like this one, or they're adding, most of the time they're adding like this one little process or policy or something like that. But then you go into like startups, they're like, no, I'm creating this thing that no one's ever even thought of before, or I'm doing it in a different way that I see could be more efficient or solve different problems or whatever it is. So it's like very like creating, like you said, soup to nuts, like creating something from somebody else's investment money mostly, but really nothing.
Yes, yes. And I particularly loved staying in both environments because I'm a huge believer in that there's a lot of opportunity to kind of cross pollinate.
Yep.
And I think that's often missed. And whether intentionally or not, I think, just to give you an example, working in higher ed, for example, we couldn't refer to students as customers, even though they are paying for a product. So by definition, they're a customer. That's just
Mm,
not how they think of it. They think of them as students, right? And so when you're really trying to and so I think it could be fun and interesting to sort of infuse some outside in perspective. And I think that's where a lot of real innovation happens. And so that's why I like to sort of stay varied and
mm.
carry concepts across different sectors and with different customers. And it's fun. Yeah.
Well, even if you look at the bigger giants out there, the ones that are the most successful are really, they're truly innovating. They're not just, changing where they, how they process, payments. they're
Right.
they're truly investing in R&D, and they're kind of playing in multiple environments at the same time. Like you look at like the Googles and the Apples and stuff that have the resources to throw it against the wall. Like they invest in a lot of like innovation arms, and they're always keeping their eye out for like these, they call them like the mavericks, the ones that are solving the problems. Like I know, like, so we work with a company, they're actually one of the sponsors for the event TruePath, where they are using some like an AI model to help people develop their like really well done. Like I did the demo, so I can attest that it is actually mind blowingly well done to help develop resumes. And it's not like just the AI is creating some resume for you. It's based on like they do intricate. It's fair. At least it seemed fairly intricate. I don't know. I'm not super privy in like characteristic tests and like what do they call those? Like the big five character test. What is that called?
I didn't know there was a name for the five of them, but I've taken many of them, so I know
Yeah,
exactly what you're talking
there's like DISC. Right, that's another one, and all those ones. I can't remember what the other one's called. There's one that's really popular, but anyways, it uses a test like those things, and it identifies some like qualities that would be very uh, efficient and seem very important and be very integral in putting on a resume for this specific type of industry or this specific business or something like that. But anyways, it's really cool. But anyway, so their goal, TruePath, I don't know, not sure if I was supposed to say the name, but maybe I'll blank it out. X, Y, and Z. Their their goal isn't necessarily to blow up that specific business like the resume thing, but it could be. But a company like LinkedIn, they're always innovating. They're looking for mavericks like that they could then bring into their ecosystem and kind of act like a bolt-on type of thing. So there's a lot of them out there, and the ones that are best are always keeping. They're like the bigger companies, ones that are best. They're always looking to improve and identify those types of opportunities and innovations. But then there's also a lot that are just like, nah, this is the way we've always done it, and we're just going to keep adding red tape until we don't make any money, which is fine.
Yeah, until it comes and gets you. Totally. And I think now it's like even more critical than it has been in the past because things are happening so fast. I feel so cliche saying that, but it's so true. It's so true.
Wild. It's wild. It's I mean, even with like OpenAI, they're just like a hot topic to talk about. There's lots of other examples, but even OpenAI, like they already have plans of putting out another iteration. So they have the 4.0 plus, or I can't remember what that one was, and then they had the 01 preview, which spent more time thinking, and it could give you more intricate answers and go through bigger buckets of data. But that was only like 3-4 months ago, maybe 6 months ago. They already are like, yeah, we're putting out another one that's going to blow those ones out of the water. It's like, gee, this is so fast, so fast. But a question, this is going to be related to our topic of the day. What is something that most surprised when you went into Salesforce? They're a monster now. I'm not sure what their capitalization is, but they're big. They're a big company. They're billion. What was the thing that surprised you the most going into like a corporate behemoth like that?
Well, I mean, I've always worked in like big companies. So I wasn't too surprised, pleasantly surprised. I was pleasantly surprised because they had their shit together. Like processes were buttoned up. Onboarding was easy. Anytime I needed help or support from IT or whatever it was clear where I could find an answer. And there was one way to do things. And that was coming from an environment where I was trying to get the organization into a model like that, because half my coworkers were on Outlook, half of us were on Gmail. I couldn't even schedule a meeting because those two platforms, by the way, don't talk to each other if they're not set up right. And so you can't see people's calendars. So I was literally emailing internal coworkers to say, when are you available? And it would take me days to get something set up. So I went from that to, and just generally speaking, I mean, Salesforce really does have their processes buttoned up. And I think to your exact point, when you've got over 100,000 employees globally, that matters a lot. So I was really impressed. I thought that was really great. That surprised me.
That's good. How big? So you moved from Salesforce from another bigger company. How big was that? Like, was it comparable or was it?
Yes and no. I was in a division of the organization, which was around 250 people, so much smaller, but it was a large organization with a bunch of different branches. And so it was a little, yeah. So
was that branch just specifically disorganized, or was that like a thing, like all the branches?
No, it was a thing. It was a thing. Yeah.
It was a thing. Got it. I've been a part of those companies before. They weren't branches of companies, but it was they had about 200, 250 employees, and they were half in, actually they were using Salesforce at the time. They were half in Salesforce. So their like fulfillment and project management stuff was still in Salesforce, but then their front end marketing and sales was in HubSpot. And so they hired, they're like silly. They hired a team to manually transfer like purchase orders and stuff from one to the other. And they did that for like a year. And they just like couldn't make up their minds what they wanted to do. They're like, yeah, we're going to go all in HubSpot. Actually, we're going to build our own CRM. Actually, we might stay with and they just, sometimes the difference between a good and a bad decision is just whether you make it.
Correct. And the time exactly the point I was going to make. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's super interesting how like on the outside, somebody who's not like into business and business savvy and that kind of stuff. These companies, how they look like they have their shit together. Then you get in there and like it's all dumpster fires for the most part. Other than Salesforce,
it's shocking. The brands you think out there that are legacy strong brands, and you get inside and you're like, what is happening?
Everyone has their. I mean, like we said, things change so quickly, and like we're always. And it's tough when you get into that hamster wheel of just reacting and putting out fires. It's tough to get off of that hamster wheel. So you get them and they're just caught in that, and they're just have the momentum. Like, have you ever been on one of those treadmills before where it's like it's a self-propelled treadmill? Like you get to a point in that and you're like, I don't know how to stop. Like you get into the wrong point, like the wrong kind of angle of it. It's kind of like that. And you're like, I'm just going to fall. I'm just going to jump off.
Yeah. I mean, that's why change management is its own role, because it's so huge, because you're not just thinking about the technology, it's processes, it's the people, it's the culture, and I get it. I mean, grain of salt for those 100-year-old organizations, because it's a lot to change.
There's a lot of like we call it like negative inertia, like the inertia by culture, where it's like, this is the way we've always done it. I don't want to change it. My grandpa worked. I'm doing what I want to live. I want to carry on his name, that kind of thing. That was a weird example, but it's that inertia by culture. And then a lot of the companies too, in some of these markets, like especially these more like commoditized markets, they have that inertia by proxy, which is they just can't pivot because all of their revenue is in this one dying or not so profitable area anymore, and they don't have the resources to dump into R&D or to pivot. That's like that proxy. It's a tough place to be, but yeah, it's circle of life.
Right.
But I wanted to talk about something more positive than feeling like it's so. And again, I haven't always been in. I mean, I guess I'm still not, but I worked with a lot of like really large companies before. Like Salesforce was a client of ours at one point. Hewlett Packard, I hear they're big. But there's a lot of stuff as I got in there, and I learned some things. Getting into these more corporate, bigger company, 1,000 people team environments, there's some skills that I didn't think I needed, or that someone would in that position need to be good at in order to be successful. So we're going to talk through some of these, and poorly capitalized, might I add, stuff I didn't think I needed to be good at to be successful in business or in my corporate job. And you actually inspired this one, because we talked about how neither of us really don't know much about pop culture, but one of our partners does, Chrissy. She's like the whiz at it. If there's ever a pop culture trivia night, she's the one. But we're going to talk through some of these skills and see if we can break them down. Okay. Also, like, where would they be needed?
All right, let's see. I'm curious. What we got?
Politics.
Oh boy.
Politics. So we get into this big, even like SMBs, like small to medium sized companies, especially if they're like, so I came into one that was in like a small town. Small town politics are ruthless, but I didn't realize I had to be good at politics. But what's your experience with having to be good and navigating politics in some of your businesses?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think that was when you mentioned going from company, let's say A, to Salesforce. I think that it's not that I had to politic, it's I realized how critical it was to have the right people on your side and have that executive support if you're trying to make change. Yeah. And that's where this comes in a little bit, I think, because you can't move forward without it. So I think that's really important. I think I was really fortunate, honestly, at Salesforce, because it starts, I think, at a little bit of a higher level, and it's generally a flatter organization. But it's my personal approach to it was be nice, be empathetic, be a human. Let people have. I think one of the most important lessons for me was just hearing people, genuinely hearing them, giving them a platform for their voice. And then you can navigate this stuff. But people want to be heard. Like, I think that at the end of the day, that's what this is. At least the levels that I was operating at. Like, I'm sure once you get into SVP, you're probably talking about a different formula here. But.
And it was fun. That was a fun thing, because I came in as a consultative, from a consultative standpoint. So I was like this third party objective. I was like this observer. They got to see, and I got to talk to. So when we were with I don't want to say names, but when I came in to Hewlett Packard, they just acquired a company B, and they needed us to come in and kind of shape up their sales org and their leadership and that kind of stuff. And they had 3 different VPs of sales in this company, and one was like international VP of international sales, one was global sales, and then I think there was like America's sales. I can't remember, but something like that. But anyways, to be able to be the observer and talk to them separately and then see them together when we would do like team meetings and stuff, it was so interesting. I was like, high school doesn't end. That was the biggest, probably the biggest surprise. I was like, this is a popularity contest. Like, especially because they're trying to impress, the big wigs now at Hewlett Packard, and they're trying to position themselves and that kind of stuff. But I wasn't sure where they were positioning themselves, because not only they're fighting over like an SVP role or a C-suite role or anything like that. They were just trying to like squeeze their way in there, like you said, creating their kind of own little teams. Like, this person's on my side. They know that they favor me. They like me. They CC me first in the emails. Thing.
Yeah.
Like, it was really interesting to see how much it mattered, because I know it matters. Like, you know that people like maybe not people liking you, but people respecting you, people backing you is important. But to see how much it is like a focal point, like if you were to actually write down an honest job description of like VPs and SVPs in some of these companies, like politics would be like half of their job description.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up in terms of the VP and SVPs. We had such an incredible leader. Like, I think she shielded us from so much of it.
Yeah.
And helped us.
You're saying that.
Yeah. Oriented to like, hey, this is what's happening up here. We need to be aligned and just fought for our team. So I think, we're talking about leadership, this leadership summit, that is so critical. You absorb a lot of that. You absorb a lot of this crap. And so, we were able to do our work because we had an awesome leader doing this.
Yeah, that is literally, one of the main jobs of, especially when you get to that level. Of the chain, is kind of protecting you from the crap so you can perform, because that's leader's job, is making sure that you are clear on what you need to do. You have everything you need in order to accomplish it, and you're clear in your goal. Are you getting blinded?
I was going to say, I'm going to go off camera for a second because I need to put this blind down. Ooh, that sun came up.
You're okay. I've been there. Because a lot of my shows that we'll do, and anybody here that's seen some of our shows, most of them are in the evening. So then I'm dealing with much different shadows when I come in during the day, and it's tough to deal with sometimes. Anyways, I'm gonna keep talking nonsense until you get it.
Oh, okay,
so much better. Beautiful. All right. I think we could keep talking about politics, but A, that's boring, and B, we could get in trouble. So I'm gonna move on. I forgot, this was Adrina's idea. Deal with adult babies. I didn't realize how much being a father would translate into dealing with corporate people.
It is 100% true. And this is one that I experienced immediately, even after college. I was an intern, and, in my head, I was like, these are adults. I'm the kid here, right? Like, I'm a college kid. And my goodness, the drama. I mean, the amount of times I got told by incredible bosses who were like, you're being too logical. Or, it doesn't work that way. This I felt immediately, and has since been surprising.
It's this is one thing. When we were kids and we looked up at our parents, we're like, man, I can't wait till I have everything figured out. I don't cry, and things are easy, and I have all the answers, and I don't throw temper tantrums, and my friends don't throw temper tantrums because they're also adults. And then you become an adult and you're like, nothing changes. It just there's different words, we dress different, and there's different problems.
Yeah. And I think you get these the adult babying. And then, if you're lucky enough to be in an organization with some high EQ, then you get healthy conversations. And I think authenticity at work, which is different. That's how I think ideally that's how adults could handle things in a mature way. But you get a lot of this.
Could
Why wasn't I on
and
that call? Why wasn't I copied? Um, goes on.
it's always surprising how again like how people react, and it only takes one. That's the annoying thing. I think that's the annoying. You could have a team of 20 people, and then there's one who always has to, not always, but they complain about specific things, and then they tell this person, and then whether it affects them negatively in their own work or their mental space or whatever it is, or they jump on the bandwagon or whatever it is, it's wild. And then the thing is, the way you deal with it is very similar to the way I would deal with my 7 and 5 year old. It's like, okay, everybody, let's calm down. Okay, let's just talk. What happened? Okay, can you, Brinley, can you please say sorry to your brother? Like he didn't mean to. How you deal with it is
Yeah,
obviously have a different tone and you use different words. But if you were to like write a step by step process, like 30,000 foot view step by step process, it would be pretty similar.
totally. I mean, it's effectively facilitating or moderating like humans. And as humans, we have hard days. And I think something I'm particularly passionate about is, work doesn't just happen in this box. It's also interconnected. If you're
Yeah.
having a hard day at home or if you're having stuff going on in your personal life, you may not be at your best. And I appreciate the leaders that I've had who have always made space for, hey, how are you doing today? And how are you bringing that into today?
Mhm.
And a lot of the time, I think this baby activity that happens is, again, because people aren't being heard, or there isn't some reconciliation that's happening, or there's some disrespect, but kind of like digging a little deeper, like why, and was it intentional? And I mean, yeah, you get some bad eggs, but
Well, I'm glad that you made that more positive, because sometimes it's not the people who are acting like I don't want to say like babies, but they're feeling unheard, or they're feeling disrespected, or whatever, and then they act a certain way. It's a lot of times it does come down. I mean, leadership has to take responsibility for a lot of that, right? And like it's just like our needs, like our basic needs don't change. Like it just comes down to like those basic needs that we have, and part of that is like feeling supported, and like we have options, and that we're moving in the right direction. uh that's like protected, like that never changes, and when we don't have it, we react very similarly.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
We could bring it to like a scientific level. It's like why it happened, so I love that. And Adrena, this was AI. This was good old Canva AI. So if you anybody could zoom in, if you look at the hand,
Oh
it's got
wow, yeah.
the Canva AI hasn't quite figured out the hands here. You got the crab hands. So, but anyways, this was an AI picture, and I thought it was pretty good. We talking about this pop culture. I didn't think I needed to know much about, but like to you, I think this was your point. It was your point. It was like small talk, going out for whether it's drinks or off-site fun workshops, and just conversing with people. Like you need there's just you need to know like the pop culture, or at least the happenings in the world that don't have anything to do with business or whatever it is. How have you navigated this?
Oh man, over the years. I think initially it was so awkward for me. So I'm first generation, and neither of my parents grew up with the pop culture that kind of typically gets passed along through generations,
Mm.
um, or even just in the home, right? It wasn't the same music that was on, or like the same things that we were doing. So this was a struggle for me until, I mean, well out of college, because that's when I started to have my own exposure and experiences to things. And I mean, truthfully, so my fiance is into football. Like
Mm.
I know nothing about football. It wasn't a passion of mine. A lot of people, and I mean, it's maybe a little bit typical in the sense that, oh, women maybe not, but there's plenty of women out there that are who are into football, right? But over the years, I've learned like, oh, I can comment on a game when I hop on a call, and you can't. It's so valuable to have those like little mini moments, those micro moments of connection
Mm.
with colleagues, with customers, whoever it might be. Um, and so it's taken me a while to be able to build that muscle. I mean, on the flip side, like I'd love to nerd out about the science talks I went to last week or whatever, but not everybody's into that, right? So like
Yeah.
that's kind of how I spent my free time, naturally.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one's taken some time.
Yeah, because you're to your point, like those little like micro engagements, those little you know areas of like opportunities to get a little bit closer with people or to relate to somebody. It's when you don't, especially if you're at somewhere that's a little bit more maybe progressive or attracts like a younger workforce. It can be it can be tough. It can be a thing. It can literally be a thing
Yeah.
where you feel like you're kind of on the outside. And Adrena gave me a test. I don't know if you can see the comments, but Adrena gave me a test, pop culture test on the spot. What new album came? I know this because you haven't stopped listening to it since then. What new album came out yesterday by a rising star in country? And I don't even know how well known she is. But her Kelsey Ballerini. I think did I get that right? She'll tell me if I didn't. She'll definitely tell me if I didn't. Like it's either that or Taylor Swift, but I don't think it was Taylor Swift. But until that, Taylor Swift, are you a Swiftie?
No, I mean, I don't dislike music, and I appreciate a lot of the stuff that she stands for, but I'm one of those people that go to Spotify and I'm like, what mood am I in today? And I click on the mood category, and then I just
yeah, we were saying that. Yeah, Spotify, take the wheel. Yeah. I'm assuming by the clapping hands that I got it right. Yeah,
Kelsey, you were right.
Yeah, Kelsey Ballerini. Yeah,
nice.
But again, that's just because she's been so. Adrena is like, she's the opposite. She lives for this stuff. Complete opposite. So there's like a month ago, she's like, guess who's coming out with a new album? So I've heard about this for the last month, and then she hasn't stopped listening to it because every time I ask her something, she has her headphones in. Sorry, I'm listening to it. But anyways, it's interesting, like just the things that we wouldn't think would help, and especially if you're in a leadership role or you're within a company that has a little bit younger of a workforce, like those little things that help.
Yeah. And, not even just music, but things like movie quotes, for example, or quotes from TV shows.
Yeah.
Totally over my head most of the time.
Yeah. I had friends, because I never really watched it growing up, but all of my friends in school watched Family Guy, and they would like a new episode would come out on Sunday, and Monday it was just like they're all just quoting it, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I feel
pivot.
Yeah,
pivot. Did you know that one? Where's Pivot from?
Isn't it Friends? Isn't it when they're moving couch?
Yeah, Ross, Pivot.
Okay, that's really relatable to me. Yeah.
Well, Friends. I mean, Friends is that's like all time, one of the all time greats. One of the things I didn't think I need to be good at, public speaking. When you get into that leadership role, you're sometimes you're talking in front of a lot of people. Did you ever have to do like the actual, like go up there and do presentations?
All the time.
All the time?
All the time. At least in my most recent role, typically it was project based. We'd run something for anywhere between like 6 weeks to a few months. And at the end of this, it was presentation time. Here are our findings. Here are recommendations. Here are how it's going to provide value for your company. And to an executive audience, which is actually its own sort of kettle of fish, if you will, for like style and content and the level which you're presenting things, how you're presenting things, back to authenticity, the authenticity around it, because people can tell when it's scripted versus when it is well rehearsed. And if you can answer questions on the fly, there's a lot here, but this one is a huge skill to have.
Big time. And it opens up so many other doors for you, because if you can get up there and you can influence a crowd or multiple people like that, it positions you a lot differently than just somebody who can just execute, which executing is really, really important. But when you can get a bunch of people bought into an idea or to care about something that they 10 minutes ago they didn't care about, is huge. So it's an influence. It kind of maybe the macro skill is like influencing one to many or one to few.
Agreed. 100%. Yep. And there's a lot of people with some insanely good ideas, and if it sits with you, it's not reaching anyone. So this one's key. I think I would say this is maybe a number one thing, because it doesn't matter if you're like an individual contributor or if you're all the way up here navigating the politics, doing the talking, you need it.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a great quote. I can't remember who it was, but he's a why can't I remember who he was? I literally did his courses. He's a speaking coach. He's from Australia. I can't remember his name, but he said, you could be the smartest person in the room. So your knowledge, your IQ, and the information that you have, the ideas that you have is up here. It's like 10 out of 10. But your
Mhm.
communication is 2 out of 10. How are you perceived and how effective are you? You're somewhere closer to that too. So being able to communicate effectively so you're not the only one that understands it, but you can convey a message so other people can understand it and get bought into it and execute on it is that's like a superpower.
Super. I love that. Yes, it is a superpower. One of the things going into Salesforce that was uncomfortable for me for a long time was doing dry runs over and over again with
Mhm.
team, with the internal team. I
Yeah.
personally find it harder actually to speak in front of people that I know well, versus an audience
I
of
do too.
strangers.
Yeah, I do too. Huh.
I don't know what it is. Um, but I got used to it real fast because it is part of the culture and because you have to be well rehearsed and be able to, like I said, to field questions and articulate ideas going in front of customers.
Mhm.
And not that doesn't apply to just corporate. I mean, when you're in startups and you're pitching to investors,
Yeah.
or if you're in a more technical role and you need to explain what the heck is going on with code over here to business people over here, and you see that all the time, right? Being able to simplify these kind of complex concepts. Yeah, yeah.
Well, the more
Important.
you do it, the more you
Hmm?
do it, the more comfortable you are when you go into like those high stakes. Like if you're within a bigger business right now, like if you're kind of swimming in a small piece of a bigger pie right now, and you want to go pivot and start your own business, and you get used to speaking all the time and speaking in front of again like the C suites and to other companies and other businesses and going to conventions and that kind of stuff, and then you go and you put yourself out there and you get good at it and you intentionally focus on it and get good at it, develop those skills, you go and pivot into pitching to investors where it's like my entire life is on the line right now.
Yeah.
If I do not get one of these people to invest some sort of money in me, I am going back to this thing that I was either miserable before or I'm working at Starbucks. So the more you do it, the more skills and the more kind of just those natural tendencies you will have when you go to utilize it in those really high pressure, high stake situations. You don't want the first time you're speaking in front of people to be in like pitching to like a bunch of VCs to like why they should give you tens of millions of dollars.
Right, right. I'm so curious actually for folks listening. Have you had a moment that it's like, ooh, foot and mouth, or have you had techniques or like how do you get good at this? What's your story around it? Like I find this one interesting. Different people do it different ways, and have different levels of comfort with it. For
Yeah,
me, I'm not nervous speaking, but now I'm at the point where I need to really fine tune how I'm coming across. Less
yeah,
ums and where are my pauses and how is my body posture and things like that. I mean, this can get advanced. So I'm really curious.
yeah. It's interesting. Some people are naturally fairly they're naturally competent at it, and then some people have to work at it really hard. And then it's interesting to see who eventually gets really good at it. And it's funny because it's usually not the people who are competent at it to start because they have no reason to
Oh,
improve. At least
yeah.
in their mind, they have no reason to improve. But I like the first time I spoke, I almost passed out. I was 18 years old.
Oh my
I
God.
was the only personal trainer in town, or I was one of the two only personal trainers in town, and they're doing some like town hall to this old folks community. That's what they called it. I'm not being derogatory. They called it the old folks community. And I get there and I practice this little 20-minute thing of like why actually like how exercise can help your joints and
Mhm.
make you live longer and all this kind of stuff. And I was 18, I was just getting clean, and I was sandwiched between a doctor and a physiotherapist talking about like the most technical things ever. And I got up there and I slurred one word and I didn't have the ability to like a either recognize it and make fun of it and move on or to just ignore it and keep going. And the entire room just went like this and everybody's face like I felt like I was on mushrooms again. Like it was terrifying. I almost passed out and my dad was there and he's like not one word made sense after that. And again, this is a small town so like people were like talking about it a little bit afterwards. And I was terrified to public speak since
Oh
then
man.
until I opened my first fitness facility and we started teaching classes. And some of the classes had like 30 people in it. And so I would get used to speaking in front of people, coordinating people, organizing people, answering questions, playing to people's, emotions that day and that kind of stuff, and a very broad type of person. So I started getting better at it without even knowing I was getting better. Like I was just teaching the class. Like I wasn't thinking about it until I got asked to do another keynote on fitness, like business and fitness. And I was like, I don't want to do it. It was like I was going back to that other experience I had. But then when I got up there, because I had hundreds, thousands of hours of coaching large groups, like 30 to 50 people, it was just so much easier. And I was like, oh, okay, you just got to do it. Like there's in some like, there's only so many YouTube videos you can watch. There's only so many books you can read and courses you can take on public speaking. Sometimes you just got to do it and put yourself in those situations.
But what you said actually brought something to mind. You're talking about how you were just doing this sort of in your everyday interactions. One thing that I've really noticed, so my fiance likes board games and does such a good job of explaining them. He's always in charge of reading the rules and explaining. And I'm like, cool, well, you always do it. I'll do it. And then it really dawned on me, actually, how good you have to be at this kind of thing to explain to a group of people so that it makes sense. You're not wandering everywhere. Everyone understands what's going on. So even in little things like that in your life, you'd be surprised how much you can pull that into professional settings. So that's just an easy little example of how you can get some practice in without being super formal about it.
Okay. It's just simplifying complex things so that a vast number of people can understand it and execute on it. Like just practice doing that and whatever. Like I would teach people how to do like seemingly complex, like Olympic lifting movements and gymnastics and that kind of stuff. And then I'm teaching it to like the stay-at-home mom over here how to do it. So, but those are all skills I didn't know I was practicing it. I just was until I realized it at one point. I'm like, oh, okay. And then you focus. And then the key is from there to then be intentional and start to practice it and hone in on skills and that kind of stuff. Like you said, if you're like, there's a difference between somebody who speaks and like a speaker, like a public speaker, like a keynote speaker.
Right.
The way you pause and it's the way you lean in, lean back, play to the audience, and like how you emphasize certain things and voice inflection and that kind of stuff. So there's a difference there. So it's kind of like how good do you want to be and how much time do you want to put into it. But anyway, we could talk about that one. Right. With Adrena, Adrena used to teach dance. So teaching dance, that would be a really good example of that. Teaching dance to people who don't even know their left foot from their right foot and simplifying that, it makes a ton of sense. Sense of humor.
Oh my God, yes. I love this one.
Sense of humor. You need to have a sense of humor for multiple reasons, but I'm gonna let you take this one away.
Oh my goodness. Things are gonna go wrong. Like, and you just sometimes really have to laugh about it because otherwise it's gonna weigh you down. And there's just gonna be some stuff that comes your way and lands on your plate, and you're like, why? And it could have gone 1,400 different other ways. But I think as long as you have this sense of humor, and that doesn't even apply just to a professional setting, I feel like in life in general, that's one of my big philosophies, like find the humor in it. Change what is in your control, because otherwise you're going to drive yourself crazy.
Oh yeah. And also you not knowing pop culture, or either of us really knowing pop culture, not singling you up. If you have a good sense of humor about it, it kind of makes up for it.
Yeah.
It makes up for like some things that you might not immediately know, understand, and make you feel like you fit in or be able to connect. But a sense of humor will always help you connect with people. But and to your point, I like kind of the direction that you went with that, which is also a sense of humor is kind of like that extra layer of thick skin. Like if you could not take certain things seriously and try to find the humor in some things, or it kind of lets things, like the not the grain of salt, the bead of water just kind of flowing off your back sort of thing. But I think this one, I think it's underrated. I think to be successful in whatever you're doing, having some monicum of the appropriate sense of humor. Like if you're a comedian, you can have the darkest sense of humor ever, and it's totally fine. But you go into a place like, I don't know the culture in sales. It's been years since when I worked with them, but at Salesforce, that sense of humor wouldn't have flown very well.
Right.
have worked really well. But the thick skin aspect, I think, is super important. And also, this was a funny picture of a horse, so I wanted to put it.
I do kind of love it. Yeah.
All right. I love it. But do you have anything to add before we wrap up?
Oh, wow. I mean, fun just chatting about these. I think these were such good ones to highlight. And I think that and I know I come from, we talked a lot more, I think, from more of like an enterprise perspective than a lot of folks listening who may be doing their own thing. But I think it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're at or how big. I think all of these are really relevant.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, all of them for sure. If you're like a small business owner and especially if you're in that first 1, 2, 3 years, having a sense of humor helps a lot because you get beat up a lot.
Yeah.
And then focusing on like your public speaking skills, like how are you marketing yourself? How do you communicate your message? How do you identify even who your market is and then communicate to them? That stuff is super important. So I'm learning how to, or at least being competent, get to like the minimum level of competency to be successful in your current state is really important in public speaking. And dealing with crybabies, that was a big one because they're everywhere. Vendors, suppliers, partners, not you, but people that come on your podcast and you realize that maybe you shouldn't have had them on or this wasn't a good conversation, and then you're not going to release their thing. But that's my own soapbox. That's my own soapbox. But anyways, it was great to have you on.
Yeah.
Thank you
so much.
Yeah, you were an integral part of making that event a thing. And I'm excited to do. I said this to you before, but again, I'll make it public. Excited to do what we got to do to kind of get you more involved in the team. And we're going to be putting on workshops here in the next year or so as we evolve the strategy core challenge. So you'll probably be seeing more of Chantal there if she doesn't get sick of us. But thank you again. Really appreciate you jumping on. And remember the merch that you can't buy yet. I'm very excited to be trying that out. And we have the second cohort for our 5-day strategy core challenge. So we'll throw the link in the description once this goes up on YouTube and on LinkedIn. But until next time, everybody, keep chasing your next summit. Almost.